Now with his thoughts is Dave Perry, a former Toronto homicide detective who now heads his own private investigation firm. Good morning. Thanks for being with us this morning. I want to begin by asking you about the shootings we've seen recently in Toronto. All brazen, all in daylight hours. What does this say to you about the people who are yielding these weapons, that they are so bold and brave to do this with so many witnesses?
Yeah, bold and brave might be an overstatement, Marcia. I think what we're seeing is a new breed of criminal. These are young people generally. They look like kids half the time, and they're carrying weapons and firearms, and they have no fear or no hesitation about using them whatsoever.
Why no fear?
Well, I think it's just the way they're brought up in the gang culture. I mean, the gangs typically start recruiting these people when they're just children. They're 10, 11, 12 years old. And, you know, they're pretty well programmed by the time they're 14 or 15 to do whatever the gang wants them to do. And that includes, you know, the ultimate act of violence, which is to open fire on somebody who is perceived to be against them or from another rival gang.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about gangs. How can we be so sure that this is the case here after what happened in Scarborough? Are police making that, is that confirmed?
Well, we're all talking as though it's gang, and it walks like it and it talks like it. So to me, this is gang activity. If it turned out to be something else, I'd be quite surprised.
Where are the guns coming from?
Well, the flow of guns typically is from the United States, and you know, back even 20 years ago, it was very difficult to find a handgun on the streets. Nowadays, we see them all the time. And for anybody that's in a gang that has those connections, it's just like drugs and everything else that goes with that subculture. It's very accessible, very easy for them to get.
So if it in fact it is gang related, what do you see as the problem? It's sort of like a chicken and egg thing. Is it the gangs or is it the guns? Where does it begin?
Well, it all goes hand in hand. It's drugs, it's guns, and it's gangs, and they control most of it that's on the streets. Every year we're seeing an increase in the gangs and the number of people who are involved in them, and therefore we're seeing an increase in the violence. And I know what some people are saying, statistically Toronto's still very safe, and that might be true, but if we were to, you know, measure the safety of this city by the number of bullets that are flying around these days, I would argue the opposite. So the gang issue, in my view, is the number one issue that's facing this city, and what happened the other night has changed this city forever, and it really should. And I hope that finally it's the launching pad for, you know, our government to take it very, very seriously and to support our chief and our police service and get the resources that they need to make a significant dent on this.
Do you think that Toronto has reached a new low in terms of its safety then? Is it less safe than ever before?
Well, that's got to be measured on multiple levels. But in terms of the gun violence, I think we've seen an all-time high in terms of gun violence, and you know, the change in just some of our other statistics, homicide rates remain relatively the same for the last many years. What's really changed is the number of homicides that are caused by firearms and gang activity. So things are changing. Some of the statistics are staying the same. But I think you have to ask the community out there how they're feeling, and I would suggest that a lot of people aren't feeling safe.
One last quick question for you. Do you feel that people in that neighborhood who have already expressed some concern should fear retaliation?
Absolutely. Retaliation is a big part of the gang culture, and you can rest assured that these people are already intent on doing whatever they have to do to retaliate for the shooting that happened the other night, and it's going to continue. And you know, right now the city should be a little bit nervous about what's going on.
Dave Perry, thanks for being with us.
My pleasure.